Hey guys, Frosty Knives here, back with another video, and this is going to be our spoiler video for Black House. So, whether you just went to watch the spoiler-free video and you popped on over here, or you don't care about the spoiler-free stuff and you just want to get into the meat and potatoes of things, and you hopped right in to the spoiler video, welcome. Welcome to Spoiler Talk for Black House. I'm glad you're here. So we'll get right into what this book is all about. And we're going to get real deep into some spoilers for Black House. So in the previous video, I said that this was an important book, that you should read this book if you're a constant reader, and that it is a very important book in the grand scheme of things. And the reason that this is a very important book is because this book is less a sequel to The Talisman and more a book about the Dark Tower. This book is so much a book about the Dark Tower that it could have been called Stephen King's Peter Straub's Dark Tower: Black House. This book may be as important to the Tower story as Insomnia was, because you hear about a lot of things in this book. So, the book, like we mentioned, is about a serial killer named the Fisherman, who goes by the name of Charles Burnside or Carl Beerstone or Chummy. He's a 80-year-old man who lives in a nursing home, but he's a serial killer, and he was a serial killer for a good chunk of his life. But the difference is now is that he is possessed by a creature known as Lord Mawson, or Mr. Munchin, or Mr. Munching, or the Monday Man. He goes by many names. But what he actually is like a chief lieutenant to the Crimson King. So he's right up there on par with Randall Flagg in the hierarchy of the King's people. So Lord Mawson is using this serial killer. He's possessing him and using him to recruit children and to bring children into Endworld. And not just any children, but children with telepathic powers. And Tyler Marshall, who happens to be the one that he brings in, the fourth one that he brings into, that he kidnaps, happens to be a really powerful telepath. And what they're doing, as we all know, is he's taking these kids and he's bringing them to Endworld so that he can use them to break the beams. And this is the first time outside of Hearts in Atlantis that we really start talking about breakers, because up until this point, Dark Tower 5, 6, and 7 haven't been written yet, and neither has Everything's Eventual. So we really haven't talked much about breakers outside of Ted Brodigan in Low Men in Yellow Coats. So you really get into talking about breakers and what they're using them for in Black House. And so he's bringing in kids, and the kids that are strong, really powerful telepaths go to Endworld to become breakers, to break the beams. And the kids that become failed breakers, they go to what is called the Big Combination, which is essentially a giant skyscraper power plant that is powering the Crimson King's empire. He's using the Big Combination, and he's using these children as child labor to power his empire and to power the Big Combination, to use it as a power source. And that's that's the big crux of Black House. And Jack has forgotten all of his times in the territories, and he doesn't really want to remember, but he's eventually forced to remember by Speedy, by Parkus. And it's very highly insinuated in this book that if Speedy is not a gunslinger, he's really damn close to being a gunslinger, and Jack is almost on the same level as Roland, as kind of being a gunslinger, because he's been to the territories, he's touched the talisman, he's gotten power, and he can use that power in Endworld to stop things. Specifically, the talisman he has residual power from touching the talisman, that he can use that power to kill Mr. Munchin. And so you finally get to the end of the book where Speedy sort of takes Jack and flips him over, not really into the territories, but he flips him over into the hospital tent from Little Sisters of Eloria. And he flips with Jack and Speedy, and then there's Sophie, which is the twinner of Tyler's mom. She's also one of the handmaidens for the queen from the territories, the dying queen, Queen Laura. Sophie's one of her handmaidens. And and Parkus, or Speedy, tells Jack the story, just like we've heard the story 1,000 times from everybody, that the Crimson King is trying to take down the tower, and that he's using the kids, and that he's trying to break the beams, and that he's looking for telepaths, and that there is a gunslinger out there who's working with his quartet to stop the Crimson King, but that's not Jack's job. Jack's job is to stop Mr. Munchin, one of the king's lieutenants. And so he does. He eventually he eventually gets to it. Black House isn't really a house. It's a portal. Black House is like a portal, a doorway portal into Endworld. Kind of like the house that Jake Chambers went through in the Wastelands. If you remember, he went through a house to get spit back into Roland's world. Remember, at the end, he went through the portal, and then the house sort of like turned on him, and it tried to eat him, and then Roland had to pull him through into Midworld. That's kind of what Black House is. Black House is a house. It is actually a house, but it's enchanted. There's glamour on the house, a word that we have heard from Randall Flagg himself. Glamour, magic. And that magic has turned Black House into a portal. And that's how the Fisherman is getting kids from our world into Endworld. He's going through Black House. And the back end of Black House is spitting out into Endworld. And so that was really interesting. There's a lot of magical stuff going on in Black House. There's a lot of creatures that are protecting Black House. Inside, they say Black House is infinite. It can be anything it wants to be. It can show you stuff. It'll show you your worst memories, your worst nightmares, your worst fears. It feeds on all of that. There's creatures and evil things surrounding it that's protecting it. It's all the magic of the king, of the Crimson King, that is keeping Black House as a portal between worlds. So eventually, Tyler is in Endworld, and the Fisherman is in Endworld, and Jack and his group of 3, so there's 4 of them, Jack's quartet goes into Endworld. And Tyler, the kid, eventually kills the Fisherman himself. It's a very violent death. He rips out the Fisherman's guts, which is extremely grotesque to read. And then Jack goes to rescue Tyler, and Jack eventually kills Lord Mawson with a baseball bat that is infused with the power of the talisman. The power of the white, right? They talk a lot about this in the Dark Tower, the coming of the white. How Roland is the coming of the white. Well, here's another version of the coming of the white. Because the power of the talisman is this white blazing light. So that's just another version of that. And Jack kills Lord Mawson. And then he gets Tyler to use his telepathic ability to destroy the big combination. So Tyler telepathically destroys and tears down the Crimson King's power plant. And, there's some sort of insinuation that doing that because Tyler destroyed the Crimson King's source of power, that gave Roland and his quartet enough time to get to the tower and finish their quest. Because it was a big setback, and it rippled through the worlds, and it really did harm to the Crimson King to lose that, and to lose all of the kids that were in there. So that's really the crux of Black House. That's really the point of it, is Jack going up against one of the Crimson King's lieutenants. And at the end of the book, more spoilers are coming, still coming. At the end of the book, Jack does die. What's interesting is that King uses the same thing that he does. He uses the same narrative trick in Black House that he did in the last Dark Tower book. You get to the end of you get to a certain point in Black House, and then the author breaks in, and then he says, now you know the story, and the kids have been rescued, and the big combination is destroyed, and the fisherman is dead, and Jack's quartet sort of go off, and the author says, and you can stop right here. You can stop right here, and you can end on a happy ending, and you don't have to read the rest of the book. But if you do read the rest of the book, you're not going to like what you see. So you're warned. Which is exactly what Stephen King did in the final Dark Tower book, where you get to the end before Roland opens the door and he says, the tower quest is over. You can stop right here. You don't have to go in the door with Roland. You can end on a high note, and you can finish the quest, and you can ride off into the sunset. But if you follow Roland in, you're not going to like what you find. And we see that here in Black House. And if we read on, we find out that Jack dies. He does get shot. He gets plugged like 8 times. And he does die in our world. But Speedy manages to grab him before he actually really dies. He flips him over into the territories. And in the territories, because he still has some of that residual talisman power, it does eventually heal him. Now, the kicker is Jack can't come back into this world anymore. Jack is stuck in the territories. He's territory bound. If he were to come back into our world for any long length of time, the wounds that he had would come back and they would kill him. So the price for Jack's life is that he is forever stuck. If he wants to stay alive and keep being alive and live his life, he has to stay in the territories. So it's a bittersweet ending because there's nothing left for Jack in his world. There's nothing left for Jack in our world. Everything that Jack loves and wants and likes is in the territories. So Jack has no family here. His mom is dead. His father is dead. His best friend, Richard Sloat, is God knows where. Anything that Jack ever loved was over there. So having him confined to the territories is not a bad thing. So if you really, really want, so you're really gonna need, if you're going on a Dark Tower journey and you're reading all the Tower books and you want to read all of the stuff that surrounds the Tower, then you really have to read Black House, because Black House is as important to the Tower as Insomnia was. Insomnia, we really found out about the Crimson King. That's when you first found out about the King and Patrick Danville and all that, and Roland's quest about saving the Tower. And in Black House, you really find out more about Endworld and the Crimson King, and about the Breakers, and about their role in breaking the beams, and the King wanting to just destroy the Tower, and destroy all of the multiverse. So that is everything I think I wanted to say about Black House. I didn't realize it was that Dark Tower centric, which again makes me realize or believe that I never read it. I may have started it in the past, but I would have remembered this. I would have known this was as important, and the fact that I didn't remember it makes me realize that I don't think I ever read it. So I'm glad that I did, and you're gonna want to read it. You're gonna, if you're a Tower junkie, you got to read Black House. You're a King junkie, you got to read Black House. But really, if you're a Tower junkie, then you have to read Black House, because it is an important part of the Tower. And I don't know how they're going to do a part 3, because the Tower, the quest is already done. And at the end of the Black House, Speedy tells Jack that he may still have a part to play in the saving of the Tower, but he's not sure. But now that the Tower story is over, and King has written all the Tower books, I'm not sure what role Jack has left to play, because he didn't show up in the final Tower books. Not that I remember. I don't remember Jack Sawyer being in the battle for the Tower. So I don't know what they're going to do, what they could possibly do for a part 3. I don't know. But guys, you're going to want to read it, and you're going to want to have it in your collection, and you're going to want to keep it up there with your Tower books. So that was my spoiler talk about Black House. I hope you enjoyed it. And as always, like and subscribe and share it around. And as always, I will see you in the next video.